From 1970 to 1973, artist Tom Wright painted over 100 canvases for the classic NBC TV horror series, Rod Serling's Night Gallery. I'm Jim Benson, co-author of the book Rod Serling's Night Gallery, an after-hours tour. In this video, I'm going to take you on a guided tour to discover what happened to the Night Gallery paintings. Night Gallery was Rod Serling's follow-up to his classic 1960s CBS TV series, The Twilight Zone. Serling would serve as host and tour guide of a nightmarish art gallery of the macabre, introducing paintings that represented the many stories featured on Rod Serling's Night Gallery. The 1969 TV movie pilot for Night Gallery featured paintings by noted Universal Studios artist Jaroslav Gaber. However, when Night Gallery became a series the following year, producer Jack Laird hired artist Tom Wright. A graduate of the esteemed Chouinard Art Institute, Tom Wright began working at Universal Studios as an illustrator for legendary directors Robert Wise and Alfred Hitchcock. Tom Wright was the only artist on Night Gallery, so he had to employ different styles and techniques to make the paintings appear that they had been created by many different artists, as Mr. Wright explains.
I wanted to try to do each painting where it didn't look like the same artist had done every painting. So that was a fun part of it, to try to change the style on every painting. That was part of the fun, though, because besides the occult, researching all of that material all the time, I was also researching all these artists, and a lot of the artists I didn't know or had ever heard of before, so it was a huge learning process, too.
Night Gallery creator, writer, and host Rod Serling was a big fan of Tom Wright's work, as Mr. Serling described.
Brilliant, young, versatile artist who sculpts and paints in water and paints in oils and does beautifully. No, they never do. They don't accept outside material, literary material. They don't accept outside painting. And my contract calls for maybe 1 out of 6 scripts and the sweeping of the studio on Friday evening.
Tom Wright not only worked closely with Night Gallery producer Jack Laird, but would also frequently meet with Rod Serling himself.
We would actually have lunch. We'd always have lunch. We'd just talk about the paintings or talk about the show, and it was great. It was really great. So he was a very nice guy. It was my pleasure to really get to meet him and hang out with him for a little while anyway.
As Night Gallery grew in popularity, so did the popularity of Tom Wright's paintings. The studio and the network were besieged with questions and requests regarding the gallery paintings.
I mean, I remember when I was doing the show, I would get letters and inquiries from people who, like somebody in Illinois, let's say, who had just bought a bar for themselves, and they wanted me to come back and do paintings for the walls in the bar, or do paintings, for their home, or paintings for. I mean, it was wild how popular they were.
Tom Wright's paintings for Rod Serling's Night Gallery represented an amazing array of abstracts, still lifes, collages, surrealism, many with twisted, oddball versions of classic masterpieces that came to life, or death, whatever the case may be. The overwhelming popularity of Tom Wright's works inspired Universal Studios to issue a series of Night Gallery posters based on the paintings. For the generation who grew up watching this classic series, the colorful, full-page advertisements for the Night Gallery posters were a familiar sight in comic books and monster magazines of the time. Ironically, in late 1972, around the same time of the release of the Night Gallery posters, NBC unceremoniously canceled Rod Serling's Night Gallery. The abrupt nature of the show's cancellation came as a shock to the artists and artisans of Night Gallery, leading to a rapid shutdown of the production offices and the dismantling of studio sets, props, and anything having to do with the creation of Rod Serling's Night Gallery. Sadly, this torrid teardown included 100 of Tom Wright's masterpieces for Night Gallery. To this day, there isn't a clear picture as to what happened to all of the Night Gallery paintings, even to the artist. Tom Wright.
As far as I know, what happened is after the show went off and everything, Universal had all these paintings. So they used to put them in the offices on the lot. Because I know at one point I was doing a couple of movies, for instance, with Stallone, and in his office, I would go into his office, there's like 6 night gallery paintings on the wall. After that, I have no idea where they went. I understand also for a while they had them in a building on the tour, so you could go around and see. I don't know how many they had.
A lot of them were used to dress the sets of other Universal productions. You'll see a lot of your paintings in Colombo.
Yeah, well, but let's see, I have, like, my daughters have 4 paintings. I have 2, and that's all I know about, you know.
Hollywood's indifference to its own history led to the night gallery paintings being scattered to the wind, with numerous canvases being sold for as little as $10, also rented out to parties and various functions never to be seen again, and occasionally acquired by individuals who had no knowledge of what they actually possessed. For many years, several night gallery paintings were poorly stored in Universal Studios warehouses, allowed to fade and deteriorate over time. Some paintings ultimately showed up at various auctions, frequently commanding extraordinarily high prices. As the value of night gallery paintings increased, so did the frequency of fraud and the counterfeiting of various gallery canvases, as artist Tom Wright explains.
I'm looking at them, and I can, of course, tell immediately whether they're my paintings or not. Right. And there's been a few presented to us that are not my paintings, so they've gone by the wayside. But they've been, passed off as gallery paintings. But they're not.
Fortunately, in 2019, Taylor White, the proprietor of Creature Features, not only published a beautifully illustrated coffee table book of the night gallery paintings entitled The Art of Darkness, but also for the first time in decades, created an exhibit of many of the original night gallery paintings that survived the studio purge in the 1970s. Appropriately held in a mausoleum, the invited guests included several luminaries: night gallery authors Scott Skelton and Jim Benson, Tom Wright's daughters, who served as models for the paintings Brenda and The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes, and the artist himself, Thomas J. Wright. Over 100 night gallery canvases were created by artist Tom Wright, but to date, only a few dozen paintings still exist. However, all of Tom Wright's masterpieces will always live on in the classic television series, Rod Serling's Night Gallery. If you've enjoyed your journey on the TV Time Machine, please like and subscribe. We look forward to having you again on the TV Time Machine.